A few years ago, DJI went a little bit off the rails with their Action series and released this, the Action 2. A complete departure from the original Action and the GoPro series of cameras, and whilst the Action 2 may not have been ideal for many applications, it was hoped it could actually be the perfect FPV action camera. In many ways, the Action 2 is the ideal replacement for the GoPro Session, being small, a module that you can simply clip onto your drone and fly with. It offers decent size and weight, coming in at under 60 grams. It supports up to 4K 60 frames a second in normal recording. And whilst there are a few compromises like a built-in battery, it was hoped that it would be the go-to action camera. Unfortunately, reality turned out slightly different, and whilst the platform size was perfect, unfortunately the Action 2 had a number of compromises, being the fact that it has a fixed glass lens, a screen on the back you can break, and worse than that, its dynamic range and exposure performance were pretty terrible. However, DJI have now finally released a replacement for the Action 2 called the Osmo Nano. It is a smaller, more lightweight version of the newer action cameras. This camera is not only based on a larger sensor, has the same SoC as the Action 5, but hopefully this could now be the ideal action camera we all hoped that the Action 2 would be. Now, in this video, I'm going to give you a complete review of this new camera. We are going to take a look at it, unbox it, we're going to fly it, I'm going to compare it to the likes of the Action 2, DJI O4, as well as my DJI Action 4 as well. This video is going to be predominantly concentrating on this camera from a flight perspective, but we are going to try it on the bench as well. And hopefully by the end of this video, you will have an idea if the new Osmo Action is ideal for you. Now, just to be clear at the start of this video, I bought this camera. This wasn't sent to me. I went and bought it. That was only possible through the support of my Patreons. So if you'd like to support us to allow us to keep making content like this, please do consider checking out the link to my Patreon down below. Okay, so let's just do a quick unboxing of this camera. I haven't even seen it myself yet, so we're on a journey together on this one. I'll just get it out. As you can see, I opted for the 128 gig variant. Frankly, I wouldn't recommend anyone goes for the 64. It is just £20 difference in the UK, and you're getting double the storage. So I would absolutely be punting for that 128 gig version. That way you just got plenty of storage space to play with without having to worry about offloading. Now, as you can see, the camera comes in those bags, and then we've got our module, and they have a funny name for this. It is called their wireless, it's not wireless camera module. Vision dock is the name that DJI have chosen for this one. However, it's not just a dock, because it will actually allow you to view your camera wirelessly as well. We'll take a look at that in a minute. Alongside those two, we also have this box with some accessories in. Now, this was the normal standard combo, so I will just show you what else you're going to get in with that. Ooh, we have some brackets. Looks like there's also a case as well. So there is a plastic protective hard case for the camera itself, which has pass-through connections for the power and the connectivity. We have what appears to be another plate. We have a hat clip. We have a suction mount with the basic DJI clamp mechanism. This is the same clamp that we saw on the Action 2 and DJI have been using ever since. So that's quite nice to see. We have what appears to be a neck strap holder. We do. So again, this allows the camera to magnetically attach to that, and then you to hang it around your neck. What you don't get in this kit, though, is a bracket that attaches to a GoPro mount. That hasn't been included with this kit as standard, although they are available. I've got a few of them because I had them with the other cameras, but they don't include one of them with this kit. And then the only other thing they do include is a USB-C to USB-C. So now I've de-stickered everything. We have our main camera module, and then we have our vision dock. Now this does take some cues from the Action 2 in the sense of this module has no external storage, no replaceable battery. It is an all-in-one camera. I've opted for the 128 gig, as I've said, and then this connects to our dock, and it will only go on one way, clips in place, and that then allows you to charge the battery on the main camera, but then also transfer your footage to the vision dock. This vision dock, again, doesn't have a replaceable battery, but what it does have is a USB-C port, as well as a micro SD card slot, USB for charging. There is no charging port on this camera itself. The only way to charge it is via those connections on the bottom there. And then, though, you can transfer your footage down to the main module here, allowing you more recording time on the top camera. Looking around, you can see on the top module, we have our lens on the front. This is actually removable. It will unscrew, which is great to see. One of the big complaints on the original Action was the fact that you couldn't actually swap the lens. If you cracked it, you had to get yourself a new camera. But who would have thought DJI will make a camera with a replaceable lens? It's a shame they didn't do that on the 360. Then we've got a little LED on the front that tells us it's on. Big DJI logo, which you're going to want to black out. We've got a microphone on the front there. We've got our record button on the top. There is no screen on this top module at all, so there's no way to see what this is doing. Unlike the Action 2 that did have its screen on the back, you are flying completely blind on this one. I would have liked to have seen a little OLED on this, not for video, but just give me a status rather than be completely in the dark. However, it is what it is, and if you do then want to be able to see what's going on, you're going to have to do that via the vision dock itself. Again, this does have some buttons on this. You can see we've got our connections on the top, and then there's two buttons either side for allowing us to unclamp it from our unit. We've got a record button, and on the bottom there's that dead clamp area, so it's not got any pins or nothing on for, again, mounting. And then, as I've showed, micro SD and our USB-C. Now, it's asking us to set this up, so we're going to select the language. We are going to need to activate this because you can't use a DJI camera properly without activating it, although they do give us 5 times remaining, which was very kind of them. So we're going to say skip, connect to app to update to latest firmware, which we're going to have to do anyway. And then we can click this. It's then telling us about the magnetic attachment, camera button. What was that one? Oh, that's the functional vision dock button. Touchscreen operation, covers, export. So. There we go. So we're going to click done. You can see there that it does wirelessly connect between the two. Let's have a look what the latency is like. Okay, that's okay. It's not shocking. It's not the best in the world. I can see a touch, but it's not the worst. That is for sure. Now, I haven't updated the firmware on this yet, so it is possible that not everything is available. So what I'm going to do is update the firmware, and we'll come back and take a look. Okay, so I have both activated the camera and updated the firmware. Now, before I walk you through the menus, I just want to show you something which is quite interesting, and I'm intrigued how this works. So here we've got both units on. We've got the wireless video. When you turn off the vision module, it turns off the camera as well. That isn't particularly shocking or surprising or that clever. However, the bit I am impressed about is the fact that when you turn the vision module on, it also turns on the camera wirelessly, which means this must be always listening for an update from the module. Just to show you this, I've turned it on and it's kicked in, and you can see both have turned on. turned off, and it's gone off again. I'm just going to place this over behind me, out of the way, and I'm going to see if it works at distance. That's about 2.5 meters through me, and it has. Oh my God. And it's almost instant. Okay, that has impressed me. When it comes to the main specs on the new Osmo Nano, I'm not going to sit here and read out every single feature. There's no point. We can all read a spec list. It's all on the DJI website. However, what I want to do is make sure you understand the headline features, but also how it differs compared to the likes of the Action 2, the Thumb 2, as well as the Insta360 Go Ultra. Now, I don't have a Go Ultra here I can actually compare it to, but I am going to talk about it as we move through. The first thing to understand is all of these cameras which I'm talking about are all capable of recording in 4K 60 frames a second. They are all capable of outputting gyro data, which means you can use all of them with gyro flow to stabilize your data manually. DJI's cameras do also have their onboard stabilization, as does the Thumb 2 as well as Insta's, but they all do support the exporting of gyro data, which means you can take control of what you want to stabilize. That, though, is mostly where the similarities end, because there are quite a few differences in the main specs between these cameras. For instance, starting with the Osmo Nano, this camera is fitted with a 1/1.3 inch CMOS sensor with a 143 degree field of view lens and an f2.8 aperture. The DJI Action 2 has a 1/1.7 inch sensor. It is a smaller sensor on the Action 2. However, it has a wider field of view up to 155 degrees. The Thumb 2 has a 1/2 inch sensor with a field of view of 160 degrees, and the Insta360 Go Ultra has a 1/1.28 inch sensor with a 156 degree field of view. One thing to understand is, out of all of these cameras, the DJI Osmo Nano has the narrowest field of view at 143 degrees. Further to that, there are also differences in the recording resolutions available as well, depending on the aspect ratio. Whilst I've said all of these cameras can do 4K up to 60 frames a second, that is only in 16:9 mode. The Osmo Nano can only do up to 50 frames a second in 4K 60 4:3. Now, it is worth me mentioning that when you first get this camera, you may actually see in the menu that it lets you select 4K 4:3 60, but once you update the firmware, that mode goes away. Whereas this can only do 4K 50 in 4:3, the Action 2 can actually do 4K 60 in both 16:9 and 4:3, which actually makes the Nano a little bit worse in that respect. You can, though, get 60 frames a second in 2.7K mode as well as 1080p mode on the Nano if you were to choose to reduce your resolution. When it comes to the Thumb 2 and the Insta360 Go Ultra, both of them only support up to 30 frames a second in 4K 4:3, so those two cameras fall well behind what these two can do. You've got 50 on the Nano and then 60 on the Action 2. When it comes to bit rates, the Nano supports up to 120 megabits a second, the Action 2 up to 130 megabits a second, and the Thumb 2 up to 100 megabits a second. However, all of this is dwarfed by the Insta360 Go Ultra, which is capable of up to a massive 180 megabits a second if you select the highest quality mode. All of these cameras can also do high frame rate slow motion modes. So for instance, the Nano can do up to 120 frames a second in 4K in slow motion mode, as can the Action 2, as can the Thumb 2, and whilst that is the same on the Go Ultra, both the Osmo Nano and the Go Ultra can both do up to 240 frames a second in 1080p mode. When it comes to weight, the new Osmo Nano comes in a couple of grams lighter than the DJI Action 2. So if I pop my Action 2 on, you can see that comes in at 56 grams, and then the Nano comes in at 53.3, roughly there. Obviously, that's a couple of grams saving, which is always a good thing, especially when you're flying smaller aircraft. It's obviously a lot lighter than you'd have on the likes of the DJI Action 4. It's almost 100 grams lighter, 90 grams. You can see big difference in weight. So you're going to have a lot of weight saving over a standard action camera. However, still not as light as the likes of the Thumb 2, which comes in at 26 grams, or the Thumb Pro, that comes in at 16 grams. But again, it's worth noting that these cameras don't have a built-in battery. When it comes to the software on this camera, it works pretty much the same as any other DJI action camera. It is very simple and straightforward to use. You have all of the normal options. So swiping down brings you into the main menu. Swiping up gives us your resolutions. Pressing this little button here allows us to select the modes. And then you've got your Pro options over here as well for your manual camera controls. When it comes to your resolutions, your recording rates and everything, that will all depend in the mode you're in. So mode-wise, we have our photography photo option. And then by swiping up, we will see the available options for that. So you've got your medium option in 16:9 or 4:3, which is 8 and 9 megapixel. Or you've got your large option, which is 31 or 36 megapixel. And then you've got your other options for how many frames you want to take below. Moving over to video, you then will have all of your modes available as I've shown already. So for instance, we've got that 4K 4:3 all the way down to 1080p 16:9. Hopping across, we've then got our Super Night option, which is for our nighttime footage. Again, allowing us to go up to 4K 30 frames a second max. Because it's nighttime footage, it's going to limit us compared to our normal operating mode. Then we've got our slow motion options. This allows us to select up to the maximum of 240 frames a second in 1080p mode or 120 frames a second in 4K mode. You then also got your time-lapse option available as well. This allows you to select time-lapse and set what you want it to do. There's some preset options, but you've also got custom available as well, where you have the ability to set your exact intervals and video duration time. Swiping down from the top will bring us into our main menu. Now, there are several options under here and everything's nice and easy with touch controls. You've got basically like a presets option that allows you to save current settings. You've got your screen brightness. You've got your controls for your module, which allows you to set what each button does. You've then got your screen lock. So you can lock your screen on this if you want to as well, which makes you swipe to unlock. You've then got your mic options. This is a lovely feature on DJI's cameras. They are fully compatible with DJI Mic 2, Mic 3, as well as the small ones. And they actually integrate and show you the details for them on board as well. You've then got your voice control as well as your gesture control options down here. And then you've got your main settings menu, which gives you the main controls over the camera and the device. For instance, you've got your display settings, your screen whilst recording, timer shooting, mic backup options, underwater color correction, USB mode, wireless connectivity, your bitrate options. Worth noting that there are high and low bitrate options available on this camera. That will obviously have an effect on heat and recording time, but if you want to get that maximum bitrate, you're going to want to be selecting the high option. You've then also got You've then got your sound settings, your LED settings, reference lines, and all of the usual stuff. Further to this, you then can swipe this way, and this will bring up our storage options. Here you will find the onboard storage status. You can see currently we've got 107 gig available of the onboard storage, and then it'll show us our SD card. You can also format your storage from under here, but also export your footage from the onboard storage to your SD card as well. Now, in my testing, it takes about 4.5 minutes to export about 20 gigs of data. Obviously, this will vary depending on the speed of your SD card, but that does give you an indication of the kind of time it will take to export the footage should you need to do so. Before we get the camera out in the field, I just wanted to do a quick demo to show you how long the camera would last on either battery or before it would overheat. So I've set it to normal bitrate mode. We're in 4K 60 wide, and I started recording, and as you will see here in the footage, I was able to get about 16.5 minutes of pure recording before the camera actually overheated and shut down. That got the battery down to about 64%, so just over half. And I think this was actually quite good considering, yes, I am not in high bitrate mode, but it does bode well for use in indoor environments. This camera is obviously going to be susceptible to overheating because it isn't made of metal, it's plastic, it's fully enclosed, but this is much better than I was actually expecting, and I don't think it's too shabby at all. The next thing we're going to do is take a look at some footage. Now, I've been testing this camera over the last week. I've used it against the likes of the DJI Action 2 that you see here on this dual setup. I'm going to actually show you some direct comparison between these two cameras, but also the O4 Air unit as well as the DJI Action 4 as well. I did intend to actually show it to you alongside the Runcam Thumb 2 as well, but unfortunately I had a bit of an incident with that and it let out the magic smoke. Entirely my fault. I thought I had it on a 5-volt regulator. Turns out it wasn't, so that isn't something I'm going to be able to do today. I haven't got any of the GoPros to compare it against either, but I honestly think the Action 2 is a real good benchmark for the new Osmo Nano. A lot of people in FPV loved the form factor of the Action 2. Overall image quality was very good. The only big downside on this camera was the fact that it had that non-replaceable big glass front and back end, but also the exposure or the dynamic range on this camera was terrible. And if you're someone who was willing to tolerate this, I think you're going to love the Osmo Nano because DJI have improved it dramatically, as you're going to see next. Okay, so what we have here is the Osmo Nano on the left and the Action 2 on the right. Both cameras are in stock auto settings. There is no difference other than whatever default settings DJI has changed between the two. Really, more than anything, this footage is to demonstrate the massive difference in both dynamic range and exposure control between the new Osmo Nano and the DJI Action 2. Anyone who flew the Action 2 will know how bad it is in the shadows. You can actually see it here as I'm flying over the trees. It has a real habit of just blacking out due to its very poor exposure control, but also dynamic range as well. You will see this really in a minute as well when I come up over the top of these trees. If you start looking at the down bit, you will start seeing, if you look down into the trees, you will see that on the Action 2 it's just complete black, whereas on the Nano you can actually see through. We'll take a look in a minute directly into, I'm not going to say the sun because the sun wasn't particularly bright today, but we'll move back towards the light and then move away from it. I'll do some yaws so you can see the difference in the exposure control as well. And then we'll come back up and have a look around the trees again, looking into the shadows. To me, DJI have done a brilliant job on this camera with regards to both the exposure control and the dynamic range. It is dramatically better than the Action 2. I honestly think this is the perfect replacement for the users who like the Action 2. It's lighter, battery life seems decent, and the image quality is very, very good. But more than anything, they have fixed the issues. Here you can really start to see it now as we come in towards these trees. The Action 2 just can't handle this, whereas the Nano, absolutely fine. We were able to see and then adjust as it comes over the top. And you're not really seeing big shifts in the brightness of the Osmo Nano, whereas you are on the Action 2. The Action 2 is shifting up and down with its exposure quite a lot, whereas the Nano, because of its increased dynamic range, is able just look a bit more stable with regards to the exposure control. However, it is worth me just highlighting that whilst the exposure control is better, there is a difference in field of view. Here to just try and demonstrate the difference in field of view between the two cameras. It is narrower on the DJI Osmo Nano, unfortunately. However, I think it's worth the trade-off for the massively improved exposure behavior. Next, we're going to take a look at some ground-based footage. Now, don't worry, I will be putting more flight footage up in a minute once this is done. But first of all, I want to compare the cameras side by side on the same scene so you can have an idea of how they look. We look at it in a couple of different positions, and we're also going to zoom in 10 times on the footage as well to give you an idea of what the detail's like. So here we have the Osmo Nano on a static record. We then have the DJI Action 2 next. Moving over to DJI O4. And then finally, the DJI Action 4. What you will see is the Action 2 and 4 do struggle a little bit on the exposure, as we know these cameras do. I have to say, though, it does look very similar to DJI O4. Next, zooming in 10 times on the same footage. So here we have the Osmo Nano. What you will see in this test is the Nano seems to have the least detail of all of the cameras. However, that might also be down to the fact that DJI have slightly less sharpness on it from the factory. You will see this a bit more in better detail in a minute when I put them up as a comparison. Having looked at loads of footage on this, and I'm not sure how this will come across in the video, but what I can tell you is I believe the Nano is a little softer, a little less detail over all three other cameras, but it is fairly minor. Here, we're going to zoom in on the boats to show you what they look like, again, at 10 times zoom. So here, we've got the Osmo Nano. Then we will move over to the Action 2. The field of view difference obviously has an impact here. Over to DJI O4 Pro. Then the Action 4. Putting the three cameras up next to each other, what you can see is the Action 2 definitely has more detail in that image. However, it is worth adding that the field of view on this does make a difference. I think O4 is still a little bit better, but the Osmo Nano is very close. Next, moving over to taking a look at it in direct sunlight. So here we're obviously pointing the camera down the beach with the sun into the lens, just to have a look at how the auto exposure behavior looks, but also how the dynamic range behavior is as well. You can see again the Action 2 and the Action 4 struggle a little bit here, but both DJI O4 Pro as well as the new Nano looks really good. Doing a test up and down to again just see how that exposure control behaves, and you can see the difference between the cameras. This is a test I like to do when testing cameras for flight, because you are going to be moving between different light sources very quickly. And again, just showing you two stills here. The first, this is from the DJI Action 2, and then the second from the Osmo Nano, in just the difference you see in that dynamic range. Next, I just want to show you a bit of that footage, but this time as a comparison between the Osmo Nano and DJI O4 Pro. Both of these were recorded in 4K 60. There's no stabilization in this footage. You're seeing the straight camera footage direct without rock steady. Overall, it's my opinion that the Nano is very comparable to O4 Pro. O4 Pro is a little sharper than the Nano, but from an image quality perspective, and especially an exposure behavior perspective, they are very, very similar. One of the big benefits of carrying an action camera on something like O4 is the fact that you're able to decouple the frame rate from the latency. For those who don't understand what I mean, O4, O3, the original DJI FPV system, all have the same limitation in that the lowest latency mode is 100 frames a second on Goggles 2 and Goggles 3, but you may not want to use 100 frames a second mode to film, and you may want to film in, say, 30 frames a second, but that's actually going to give you the highest latency from the system. And the benefit using an external camera gives you is you can decouple the latency from the frame rate, which means you can fly in 100 frames a second, get the lowest latency mode, but then use your action camera in the desired frame rate you want to get the best looking footage. You might want that motion smoothing that you tend to get in 30 frames a second, and that's the benefit using this camera will bring. If you are happy with the image quality, the footage from O4, I'm pretty sure you will be happy with it from the Nano as well. And here, just to show you them side by side so you can see the field of view differences. Again, we are in wide mode here, not the ultra wide or whatever DJI call it. We're going to use it in wide mode. That way you can see the direct comparison between the modes in stabilized available modes rather than the ultra wide where you can't use stabilization. So, just to share with you some thoughts on the footage side of things before we touch on a couple of others and then give you my final summary. Overall, from an image quality perspective, I think it's on par with DJI O4. It's not quite up there even with the Action 4. It's a little bit softer across the board, but it is very, very good. I think anyone who's been using an Action 2 will be more than happy with this camera. Anyone who's looking to get the weight down will be happy if you've used O4. They have dramatically improved the behavior compared to the Action 2. Exposure behavior overall is just night and day different, as you have seen. Something just to note is I've done all of my recording in normal bitrate mode, not high bitrate mode. I actually intended to go back and do a lot of stuff then in high. However, this video would go on forever. I tested it in normal, and normal is what you've seen in this video. It's worth taking into account with regards to the bitrate itself. Normal in 4K 60 will get you somewhere between 60 and 80 megabits a second. If you then put it into high bitrate mode, you can get between 100 and 115. I've not quite seen the 120, averaging around 110 in high bitrate mode 4K 60. But that does come at a cost. I haven't concentrated too much on the ground-based use of this camera in this video. I have, though, been doing thermal testing, and it gets a lot hotter in high bitrate mode compared to normal bitrate mode. I might cover the thermal elements on this in a separate video, otherwise this one will go on forever. With regards to battery life on this camera, this is something obviously people are going to have a question on. In all of my testing in normal bitrate mode, I reckon you will get between 6 and 8 3-minute flights. It does charge very quickly from the base, so if you're landing for a few minutes, you can pop it on and it'll start to charge. Although it is worth taking into account, this battery will soon go down as well. You do want to be making sure that you carry a battery pack with you. And one little quirk just to take into account is, if you're in the field and you're using this to actually line up your shot, make sure you've powered this down but your camera is still on, because they communicate. And if you turn this off, it's going to turn this off. But if you turn this on, it doesn't always turn this on. So just take that into account. With regards to that wireless functionality, I have done some testing. And it is Wi-Fi. You can select between 2.4 or 5 gigs. And I'm getting a couple of 100 yards range. You can actually fly with it as well if you wanted to, but I wouldn't recommend it. But I did a walk test just to see how far away I could get. And at my test field, I was able to get to the end of the field without any problems. However, it isn't designed for long-range wireless links. It isn't OcuSync. It is basic traditional Wi-Fi. With regards to this camera and heat, as I mentioned earlier, I am doing a bunch of testing, both in normal and high bitrate modes. That will have an effect on how long it lasts in normal use. As you can see here on the thermal images, the camera does get a little bit toasty, and specifically you can see what areas that is in. But this is too much of a talk to go into this video. It's enough conversation to warrant its own video, and I'm hopefully going to release that in the near future. Okay, so to give you my thoughts on the Osmo Nano, and I actually really like this camera. It is an absolute no-brainer replacement for the DJI Action 2. It is better in basically every way. If you're someone who liked that small form factor, less than 60 grams, I think you're really going to like this. It isn't perfect. I don't think it's quite as sharp. We can play with that in the settings. I don't think it quite has as much detail, but overall, it is a great replacement as an external camera if you want to keep the size and weight down. So you're flying cine whoops, you're flying anything where weight is absolutely a factor. I think you'll be happy with it, and it's good because you can replace the lens as well, which means if you did break it, you don't have to send it away to DJI. With regards to criticisms, I would have liked a really small little OLED or LCD display just to show the mode and status. The only thing I found a bit quirky with it is you don't know you're in the right mode when you power it on its own. And then you end up having to power it on with the base. And then you end up in a bit of a faff, because when you power it up with the base, when you turn the base off, it then turns the camera back off, which then means you've got to turn the camera back on. Although you can set this to auto power off, but I would have just preferred it if there was a small LCD display that just showed the frame rate, the resolution that went off when it was recording, just so you knew when you powered it on, you were in the right mode and you didn't have to rely on the base. Probably a feature for the Nano Pro or the Nano 2, whatever DJI release. Again, it is a camera that is compromised by its internal battery. Storage isn't a problem on this now. If you go for the 128 version, and I don't recommend anyone goes for the 64, storage will be fine, but the battery remains an issue. I am going to see if we can come up with something for powering this externally, but honestly, for its intended purpose, I think it's a no-brainer. And what then really tips it over the edge is the price, because compared to the pricing on the Go 4 Ultra, it's dramatically cheaper. And that is hard to ignore. You can almost get two of these. Not quite, but still, it is a dramatic difference in price compared to the Go Ultra. So, overall, I really like the Osmo Nano. If you're interested in getting one, You can order it from DJI, you can order it from wherever you can get it. Obviously, US users, this is all a little bit in the air. I hope you have found this video interesting. Please do let me know what you think down below as well. If there's any questions you have that I haven't answered, put them down there. I'm probably going to follow up with a thermal video. I've concentrated on flight rather than bench on this one, but if there is anything you want to know, put it in the comments and I will try and answer it. Please do consider checking out the links to my Patreon as well as buy me a coffee in the description. It is only through the support of my Patrons are we able to keep making content on this channel. And if you'd like to support us, please do check it out. I want to say a huge thank you to all of my Patreons. We would not be able to do this without your support. Anyway, that's it from me. Stay safe. I will speak to you soon.